As the movie begins, a group of chiefs can be seen wandering around the palace, appearing gloomy and murmuring inaudible words. Shortly after, the kingdom's priestess approaches them, and they inquire about their king. She confirms his death, causing them to lament bitterly. In the next scene, a young man named Ebuka walks briskly while his friend runs after him, calling out his name. He quickly turns around and momentarily stops to blame his friend for their lateness to the king's funeral. He angrily states that because of his friend, they will arrive late and there will be no food left for them at the ceremony. His friend reassures him that there will be food remaining. In response, Ebuka warns his friend that he will harm him if they arrive and find no food left. They continue walking, and as they do, the village town crier passes by, announcing that the priestess has requested all male children from each household to gather at the village square at sunset. Ebuka ignores him and proceeds towards the burial ceremony, with his friend closely following behind. In the following scene, the priestess informs the chiefs that she has been instructed by the gods to choose a new king, even though the old king has not been buried yet. The chiefs try to object, particularly the Anou, but the priestess insists that it is the decision of the gods. At this point, the young men representing all the families in the village are standing nearby. She instructs each of them to pick an egg from the bowl on the ground and eat it. Meanwhile, Ebuka and his friend argue over missing the ceremony and not having any food. Ebuka threatens his friend, telling him to stay away or else he will harm him. After the men consume the eggs, the priestess receives no confirmation from the gods, which displeases her. She asks if every family was truly represented. Meanwhile, Ebuka and his friend stumble upon the gathering and quickly join, inquiring if the feast has already ended. Once again, the priestess asks if there is anyone else who hasn't eaten. Ebuka promptly responds, and he and his friend are asked to each pick an egg. While picking up the egg, he grumbles about an egg being too insignificant for such an important occasion as the king's funeral. As soon as he eats the egg, thunder roars and a bird's droppings fall on his head. The priestess notices this and calls him forward, declaring him the new king. In the subsequent scene, the Anou expresses his concerns to his son regarding the new king, particularly because he is merely the son of a basket weaver and not of royal lineage. In the following scenes, Ebuka is crowned as the new king, and immediately after the crown is placed on his head, he demands food. The priestess tries to explain that performing the coronation ritual is more important than eating, but he refuses and insists that food be brought to him first. Later, his friend visits him at the palace, and he playfully asks the palace guards to chase his friend out, but he stops them when they attempt to. They engage in friendly banter, and he informs his friend about how frequently he eats and how everyone is at his service. In the next scene, King Ebuka falls asleep and has a dream where an unknown, frightening man bites him on the neck. He wakes up frightened and drives away the princess who came to pay homage to him. Soon after, the chiefs gather at his palace and bow to him in greeting, but he requests them not to bow anymore, stating that he is not their god. Instead, he teaches them a humorous dance move to replace bowing. As they gather, they inform him of the unfortunate fate that befalls any crowned king 6 months after the coronation. Ebuka is distressed upon hearing this and asks why he wasn't informed beforehand. He attempts to reject the kingship but is reminded that he cannot refuse as he was chosen by the gods. In the next scene, the Anou convenes a private meeting with the other chiefs and criticizes Ebuka's suitability to rule, citing his background and behavior. He also admonishes the dance that Ebuka made them perform instead of the traditional bowing. Suddenly, a madman interrupts their meeting, and they angrily chase him away. In the subsequent scenes, all the chiefs except the Anou gather at the king's residence to resolve a land dispute with their neighboring kingdom, Akajakwu. The disputed land spans 40 acres, and in an effort to establish peace, Ebuka divides it equally between both kingdoms. Meanwhile, the Anou continues expressing his disappointment in the choice of king to his son. However, his son informs him of the positive reputation the villagers have of the king and his leadership. He asserts that he, the Anou, alone deserves the position of king. A few months before the proposed date for the king's demise, the priestess is summoned before the king and the chiefs. They inquire if the gods have revealed to her how to prevent the untimely deaths of the kings. She responds that she hasn't received any divine messages in a while, leading them to accuse her of lying. Shortly after, another chief priest from the Oja kingdom joins them and informs them that the gods are displeased with their actions, resulting in the deaths of the kings and the potential for more deaths. In the next scene, the chief priest from Oja presents a keg of palm wine to Jaku, the palm wine tapper, as a gift for the king. Meanwhile, it is the 6th month after the coronation, and the king fears his impending death. He can be seen seated on his throne, lamenting his fate. The priestess seeks guidance from the gods and calls out to them in her shrine. However, she is interrupted by the Anou, who once again expresses his belief that the king is unworthy. The priestess insists that he is the choice of the gods, and he should accept it as such. While they discuss, the palace guard interrupts them, breathlessly instructing them to follow him to the palace. Upon arrival, they find the king lying lifelessly on his deathbed. In the final scenes, the movie takes a twist as the king passes away, and the Anou calls for a meeting at the palace with the chiefs and villagers. They gather around the king's body, covered in a white cloth. The Anu immediately declares himself the new king and sentences the priestess to death by stoning. However, before this can happen, the priestess pleads to pay her final respects to the king and opens the corpse, revealing that it is not the king but the madman inside, who is alive. He quickly gets up, surprising everyone, including the Anu. The Anu stammers as he asks for the real king's body, and then the actual king approaches to join them. The Anu inquires why he is still alive, and he confesses that he had poisoned the king. The king narrates how he orchestrated a plan using the madman, who was never truly mad, to spy on the chiefs, thereby uncovering the Anu and the chief priest of Oja's plot to kill him, just as they had done to previous kings. As the movie comes to a close, the villagers are outraged by this revelation, and the Anu is punished and banished from the kingdom. Make sure to subscribe and turn on the notification button so you don't miss the next video. Thanks for watching and see you in the next one.